Welcome to True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People, the podcast where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction, and reminding you that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. Here is your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to an episode of True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you guys haven't already, make sure you follow us on all of our social media. One link to a link tree will get you every place you need to go pertaining to the show. And as always, I'd like to remind you, if you are someone or you know someone who feels like they want to hurt themselves or others, please leave this episode and dial 988. It is the suicide prevention hotline. They are there to get you the help that you need. You can text or call them. And in case no one else has told you this today, let me be the first to tell you that I do care and I do need you to be here. There is nothing worth your life. All right, before I get into this, just trigger warning. This is dealing with politics, assassinations, race, probably everything that goes with the political world. So if you are sensitive to that topic, please turn this off now. And we understand that you have to miss this one. All right, guys. So, as you can tell by the title, we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I'm going to tell you this off the top. First thing I'm going to tell you is I usually never talk politics. I am not a political channel. Yes, I do have political stances. I've probably given a couple of those very lightly in some other episodes, but I have never dealt with and talked about politics, but I'm going to today. There are things that I think needs to be said, conversation that needs to be heard. So I'm going to just tell you candidly what I believe and how I feel about this whole thing. If it causes me listeners, if you decide you can't listen to me anymore because I say something you don't like, I hate to see you go. But this is the reason that the nation is in where it is now. Nobody can say what they feel or give their truth or how they feel, especially when something directly affects them. So if you feel like that my political stances don't match with yours and you decide to turn away from my show or not be a part of my show or come on my show, sorry to see you go, but these are my stances and I stand firm on them. The biggest thing that I want you to hear before I begin is this. I do not, never have, never will condone any type of violence, no matter who it is or who it is done to. I also do not agree with, never have, and never will celebrate the death of someone else. I am going to say for the people that is doing this, though, especially Black people, I do understand what they're saying and where they're coming from, but I think to openly mock someone's death is just horrible. I also want to point out that even though this has been told to me several times, the Black people's been doing this, I can show you about 5 different videos right now on YouTube where it's all white people that is mocking the death of Charlie Kirk. It is just not Black people. I don't condone it either way, no matter who that it is. You have to think about the fact that this man does have a family and the mocking of his death. His children one day would have to see it. I think they're too young to know now, but his wife is seeing this. So we don't care about Charlie Kirk. You should at least care about the people in which he's left behind that may have nothing to do with his political stances or whatever the case is. So I want that to be perfectly known before I begin. I hope you guys paid attention to what I said. Because I want nobody coming back to my, I condone this. I don't condone anything, and especially don't condone the killing of someone, especially an assassination in the middle of a college where there's tons of people, and his family, I think, was even there. So let's begin. On the 10th of March, as we all know, in Utah, Charlie Kirk was at Utah Valley University in Orem, and he was assassinated there somewhere around, I think, 12:23 or 12:30 in the afternoon. According to what I have read, the shooter was on site at least 30 minutes prior to the shooting taking place. So it'll be very easy for the shooter to get on the top of, I believe it's called the Losi building, without being detected because of the way in which he blended in. This also means that this guy was on top of this building for at least half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. So you just park it half hour before he actually shot Charlie Kirk. I think there's a number of things before I say why I think his wife should sue that we should go over. And this assassination has caused a lot of people to either step back or end their political career because of what happened immediately after Charlie Kirk was shot. Now, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, I am not a Republican. I am not a Trump follower. I am not a fan. I think we have the most deplorable president of our time in office right now. I think it's running kind of like a cult. A lot of people have been affected by his reign the first time, and more people have been affected by his reign now in the second time. I am a registered Democrat. However, I don't vote Democratic all the time. Matter of fact, the last voting cycle, I tried to change from being a Democrat to an independent. But when I got to the forum, people, it was like, you can't vote for this. You got to vote just this. You can't vote on this. And on president, I said, all right, I'm just going to stay where I'm at and do what I've always done. And what I've always done is I've always voted for the person that I felt like was going to get the job done. I always voted for the person that I felt like was going to do the right thing for the country. Always voted for the person that I felt like had my best interests at heart. This is how I've always voted. So I've never always voted down the line Democrat. When I was 18, had to sign up for selective service and register to vote, I chose the Democratic Party because I felt like that was the party at the time that matched the best interests of Black people. The Republicans has been against us for many years. No matter what anybody tells you, I live in this skin. I think I know what I face from that party. Second of all, you did have a very charismatic person by the name of Bill Clinton, who's Democratic, but he was going all over the place, right? He was really in tune with the youth. I mean, he went on TV, he was playing his saxophone, he asked questions about if he ever smoked weed. He was going after the youth, and we loved it. We felt we would have a president that would get in office and do the right thing by us. So a lot of youth back in that time, including myself, voted Bill Clinton in. But I've also voted for Republicans. I voted Bush in because I felt there's some things that he did that nobody else should go clean up his mess but him. I voted Republican before because I felt like that was the best candidate, even over the Democrat. So again, I don't necessarily go in and vote my party. I vote whoever I think is going to get the job done. I just want that to be clear before we go into the next section. Also, I want to be clear that long before Donald Trump was ever the president, long before he even thought about running for the president, I've always had issues with Donald Trump. And many Black people has issues with Donald Trump. And if you do your homework into Donald Trump, you would figure this out. I know nobody wants to believe Mary Trump, who's this niece that released a book on him, but all these people from his family can't be lying. But I did my research into Donald Trump, and I did not like him before he even thought about running for president years ago. I want that to be made clear, too. Now, let's get back to the assassinations of Charlie Kirk now that you know where I stand. You have to look at where this came from. The first thing people came out on the right and said is the Democrats is responsible for Charlie Kirk's death. The Democrats is who killed him. Did we overlook the fact, folks, that we have a 32-time convicted felon as our president? Sexual assault comes into that. They're trying to cover up the whole Epstein situation because his name is on these logs. I mean, after all these several pictures that he's taken over the years, he tried to distance himself from Jeffrey Epstein a while ago, and it didn't work. Now, in my opinion, This is something that should have gotten Trump disbarred from ever running for president and never be able to run again. Let's look at what we would go through. We were a 32-time convicted felon. No right person is going to put us in office, but he just had this backing that he had put people into intimidation and said, this is going to be what I am, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to rerun and I'm going to be in office. That's why he's there. But we can't get a job. People don't want to look at, oh, man, you a 32-time convicted felon. You ain't getting no job, especially find out that some of your charges have to do with women and sexual assault. Out. You can't vote anymore. That right's been taken from you. Your whole world is pretty much in shambles. So if anybody else would have been a 32-time convicted felon, I guarantee you they would not be the president. If Barack Obama or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden was convicted felons, there would have been all kinds of movements all over the planet on the right side that would have been yelling and screaming about, we can't deal with criminals and we can't have criminals in the White House. But that didn't happen when it came to Trump. So we have the biggest criminal running the country. But sadly, there is no rule that says that. I've dug into it. I've looked into it. I want to see, can he really run? Did the founding fathers put anything in the Constitution anywhere we overlook that says a person can't run if they've been convicted, but there is no rule. So he's able to get away with that. As long as he has the votes to get in, he gets in. But in my opinion, if anyone is responsible for Charlie Kirk's death, it is Donald Trump. They're going to try to paint Charlie Kirk's death as being a martyr. I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, he is no martyr. He ain't sacrificed anything. If you want to call him a martyr, though, then let's just say it's because he stepped in front of the bullet for Donald Trump. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. According to what we know, there has been 2 attempts on the life of Donald Trump. One at a speaking engagement and one at his golf course. So I will tell you, the assassination of Charlie Kirk has now brought up questions, especially dealing with the assassination attempt on Trump's life in Pennsylvania. A lot of people don't believe that that was real. Some people think that it was staged, and unfortunately, the people that actually got shot in the back was just collateral damage. But from what I've also read and dug into, there was no real scab over, there was no surgery, there was no piece of ear that was missing. And so now people's questioning that if the person that shot Charlie Kirk was approximately the exact same amount of feet away from where the shooter was from Donald Trump, how is it that Charlie Kirk gets brutally assassinated by taking a bullet to the neck, rupturing all kinds of arteries, right? This is why I think he died so quick, because he's bleeding out profusely and they have to get him to the hospital. By the time they get life-saving aid to him and try to pump in some blood and the whole nine, it's too late, right? He's lost too much blood. So how does this person that tried to kill Donald Trump miss so badly? That's now coming into question. But at least 2 different attempts has been done on Donald Trump's life. They've never been able to get him. If it is true he was shot, then his ear got grazed once. And I guess the other one, I believe, was foiled before the guy was able to do anything. Even though Secret Service had told Trump, don't go to your golf course that day, he didn't want to listen. So now what happens is, it's kind of like a gang or a cartel hit. See, in the gang and cartel worlds, nobody's off limit with the exception of women and children. So if we can't get to the person we want to get to, we'll just take out the next person closest to him. Well, if you look at the political scene at this point in time, there is nobody more closer than Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump was bosom buddies. So we can't get to Donald. We'll go ahead and take out Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk has the exact same beliefs as Donald Trump. Charlie Kirk is following everything Donald Trump says. Maybe this would be a shakeup and a wake up call. So if you want to say he's a martyr, maybe he's a martyr because of the fact that he took the bullet, I believe, that was meant for Donald Trump. I do believe that if Donald Trump was sitting in that exact same spot that day on the 10th of September, that the same thing would have happened, except for at this point in time, Donald Trump would have been killed like Charlie Kirk was. But let's look at what led to Charlie Kirk's shooting. Why do we say that if anybody's responsible for Charlie Kirk's death, it is Donald Trump and it's the right side? The problem is the people that are Republicans that is following Donald Trump. I'm not going to say all. I've said before, there are Republicans and there are MAGA. They are two different people. So MAGA people that follows Trump made his own little movement, overlook the facts I'm about to give you. And if you're going to try to treat one person one way, you got to treat everybody the exact same. Let's give you some stats of why I think led up to Charlie Kirk's death and why I think that this is going to continue to happen in the White House, and whoever it is that's over this security needs to make changes immediately if you don't want another assassination to take place. If you change nothing, another assassination is going to take place, and I believe it's going to take place all the way up until the point to where they finally either get Trump or they harm him seriously. Here are the things that you will not find Trump mentioning, because he didn't mention it at all during this whole assassination on Charlie Kirk, or you won't find his followers mentioning either, because there's too much truth in what I'm about to tell you. In Donald Trump's first run as president, from 2017 to 2021, there was 144 school shootings. I think that's the most of any president. The day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, September 10th, there was a Colorado school shooting where 3 people were shot. Did you hear Donald Trump mention that at all when he gave his little speech about Charlie Kirk? No. And that got buried. I listened to one of the independent news sources I listened to. His name is Reese Waters, and he was like, dude, I couldn't find hardly anything on this shooting. It got buried because of the fact that Charlie Kirk got assassinated. This is what they put every one of their bags in. So we didn't even know anything about that. But did you guys know that? The same day, there was a shooting that took 3 people's lives in Colorado again. Now, here's one of the biggest reasons. There was no mention of the Democratic lawmakers that was slain. Melissa Hortman and her husband, the shooting of John and Yvette Hoffman, and the attempted shooting of Hope Hoffman, and the dude who did it stalked all of them and premeditated these murders and attempts. Did you hear him mention that in his speech? See, he won't mention that because the dude that did all of these things, that killed Melissa and her husband and tried to shoot John and Yvette and their daughter Hope, was Vance Bolter, a card-carrying MAGA follower, and he says he's an evangelical Christian. Bringing up evangelical Christian, I want to point this out right now. Don't be fooled by what you hear people talk about their evangelical Christians and radical Christians. That has nothing to do with Christianity. I am a Christian. The God I serve condemns all this stuff that Trump's doing. Yet you got Paula and all these other ministers talking about something. They're going to pray for all these angels to come in from Africa and all this kind of stuff, and that the good Lord has sent Donald Trump to save the world. Again, they must be serving a different God, a different Jesus than what I do, because the God that I serve in my Bible preaches love, unity, respect for all this stuff that Donald Trump is running down, trying to deport people back, not even to the country they come from, and cutting people's Medicaid and trying to make the poor poorer. That's not who God is. So I'm just going to tell you this point blank. The God they serving, and they call the evangelicals, is not the God that we preach as Christians that everybody should follow with love. And I want that just to be plain and clear. I don't know what they doing, but none of this, I'm sure God is sitting there going, yep, this is right, boy. Donald Trump deporting everybody. This is what you're supposed to do. Get that earth back together. No, I'm sure God's not saying any of that. I'm sure God's probably pretty appalled with the way that America is running right now at this point. And here in a bit, I'm going to give you 2 scriptures just to prove my point. But let's move on. So they won't talk about that because the person who did these murders was Vance. It was so bad that Melissa Hortman, when this happened, Trump just made this big blanket statement. Yeah, well, political violence, no place to be doing in the world. We're going to have to get to the bottom of this, yada, yada. But then when it was time for him to call Tim Walz, he said he's not calling Tim Walz. It was a waste of time. Where was the flags ordered to be flown half-mast when these Democratic leaders was killed? Where was the big old speech and eulogy from the Oval Office when these Democratic leaders were killed? They should have been given the exact same respect and honor, regardless of the side of the aisle that they were on, that Charlie Kirk received. But because these people does not match up with Trump's rhetoric, doesn't happen. What about the attack on Paul Pelosi? That Don Jr. mocked him all over social media. That guy could have died. Did he make mention of Gabby Giffords? How about the Capitol riots of January 6th? Where was the Democrats there? Since the left is the ones that's causing all this crime and havoc, where was the Democrats and the people on the left that day on January 6th? Let me remind you that Trump did his best to release everyone he could the moment he took office, and he told you that. The threats to law enforcement comes from MAGA. So all these threats against the judges and the prosecutors, all MAGA people. How about the man that loaded his van during Trump's first term, that he had explosives and weapons and drove onto the lot of CNN and was going to kill everybody there simply because Trump called them the enemy to the people? These are the things that we cannot sweep under the rug, people, because this is what's gotten us here. And I'll be the first to admit, there is hatred that does come from the left side. But I don't believe that it's hatred towards the people. It's hatred towards the current administration's policies, what it's doing to set back not just white people, black people, Jewish people, Spanish people, but all people that live here in the U.S. It's affecting all of us, some greater than others. Words come back to haunt us, like some of these I'm just telling you here right now. When Trump said that CNN was the enemy of the people, it was those words that radicalized that man to want to go and kill someone. Just like it's the words of Charlie Kirk that egged on this person that wanted to assassinate him. Words like "go fight like hell" in January 2021 before they stormed the Capitol building. Now, before I go and tell you about more words that get us in problems and freedom of speech and all that good stuff, let me point out that I waited this long because I wanted to see if they were actually going to catch the person who shot him. And they did. And we're going to clarify that because now you got Cass Patel up on his high horse talking about something. The FBI did this, and this is what happens when the FBI and law enforcement get together. It took them 3 days to do it, but they got it done. People, Cass Patel and the FBI didn't do nothing. The young man that shot and killed Charlie Kirk's name is Tyler Robinson. Now, right now, they're going off saying the alleged killer. But when you confess that, I think that that's pretty much not alleged anymore. Tyler Robinson is a white, straight Republican male. He's from the red state of Utah. His whole family is Trump supporters. He, on the day of the shooting, was dressed in a Trump shirt, they said. Now, I saw him in a black one. I don't know if the insignia had Trump on or not, but I just saw a flag and, I think it was an eagle over that. He dressed up like Donald Trump for Halloween one year. He's been around guns his whole life. They show photo after photo after photo and comments made by his mom about him going out and shooting in the whole nine. But now that it's come out that he is MAGA, what do we do about that? Well, they try to spin it and say, oh, wait, no, he ain't one of us. He's this used to be Republican that's now this leftist killer. No leftist that they want to call us is going to go dress like Donald Trump. They're not going to support his ideology. They're not going to back him up. They're not going to wear a Trump shirt. There's a photo directly on social media, this dude is standing in a straight Trump shirt. I believe the term is Graber. They're saying that he's a Graber. Now, Graber is a group that writers Mark Fuentes started. Now they're claiming him because I guess that's what they do within this group, right? They go and they are Republicans and they believe in MAGA and the whole nine, but there are certain things they don't deal with, I guess, and they want to eradicate that and the whole nine. Well, they're saying that this young man is probably part of that group. But now they're trying to turn the tables. Now, let's look at what didn't happen, though. What do you guys think would have happened if it would have turned out to be someone who was the Democrat, a black, transgendered, or gay person? What do you think the news cycle would look like? Now, I want to remind you that Trump told lies before he even knew who the shooter was. He went up from the Oval Office about how the Democrats is responsible and this is what happens when the left is doing things they shouldn't do, and they're going to do everything in their power to find out who it was that killed them, and they're going to go and they're even going to bring down the organizations that fund them. He was putting that rhetoric out there that he put out there when he ran for president that says the Democrats is evil. They're the reason why these people's dying. They're why everybody's getting killed. Boom. What happened from that? Jesse Waters goes on Fox News and he calls for civil war. Again, remember the question I asked you, what would have happened if this would have been a Democratic, black, gay, or trans person? Keep that question in mind. I'm getting back to that, but Jesse Waters called for civil war. There's been tons of videos on YouTube with people going off about, we gonna come get you MFers and we're gonna kill you. We tired of the left. The left is the reason why everybody's dying. Democrats must die, because words, people, mean things. And when the president of the United States is saying Democrats is the killer before he knows who the killer is, you see the riot in which it incites. So again, what happens if this person would have been Democratic, black, gay, or transgender? What would the news cycle look like? Man, we would still be dealing with that right now. Trump would have got all super hype. He would have been back in the Oval Office. He would have told you what was going to happen. Jesse Waters and all the radicals on the MAGA side would have been like, we going to go get them. We got to kill everybody. Now that puts black people, if it's a black person, gay person, or transgender person, all as targets now for these unhinged people, because they're the ones who shot and killed Charlie Kirk. But the moment that we find out that it's Tyler Robinson, who is a Republican, who is from Utah, whose dad is now a retired sheriff, who backed everything MAGA had to do with, now we don't got that much to say. And Trump tried to change the subject when he was on the news while he lied, because he sat here and gave you this story about how the FBI was involved, and he told them that a minister had identified a person as Kirk's suspect shooter from photos made by law enforcement. And then he went on to say the minister got in touch with the deputy U.S. Marshal whom he knew, and eventually the suspect's father got involved and they drove into the police station. All 135,000% lies. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Tyler Robinson went to his dad, confessed to his dad, and said that he was the one that had assassinated Charlie Kirk. His dad did call the minister. I would have called my minister too. I need prayer. My son just told me that he is the one that just assassinated Charlie Kirk. I need prayer. So I'm going to call my ministers too. Then after he talked to the ministers, the dad drove Tyler into the police department and he turned himself in. That's the truth, people. No matter if you don't believe it or not. The FBI, Cash Patel, they didn't do nothing. From what I've read, they messed up the investigation. They got in the way of Utah law enforcement that prohibited them from getting this person. So there you go. Because being that Tyler Robinson's from Utah, the pictures that they got of him was crystal clear. Somebody probably know him around there, especially if his dad was the ex-sheriff. Get out the way. Let them do it. So that's the truth of what happened with that. Tyler Robinson was taken in by his own father after he admitted to his dad that he was the one that killed Charlie Kirk. Now there became the issues of the bullets, because there were certain things that was written on these bullets. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'll leave you a link to an article in the show notes if you want to go read what all of them were. But there is one that I want to touch on specifically. One, the reason because of what it says, and the other one because of who they tried to attribute this to and what they said that they thought that it meant. On one of the bullets, now they don't say if this one was used or not, because they did point out with some of these that some of the bullets did not get used, but had these things engraved on them. One of these bullets had the term "Hey Fascist, catch" on it. Immediately after that, to the right side, there was a code. And the code was up, right, down, down, down. Now that code, they said, oh, man, that is a code that goes to the video game Helldivers, with no clarification. So people went in search of and said, okay, so now there's racism in Helldivers. Let's go take a look, because now Helldivers is about to lose some business. But the word "Hey Fastest Catch" was never a part of that. Now that affects me directly because I do play video games. I just couldn't get into Helldivers. And every development puts a code in their game, just like the old, what we call the Konami code. That was built into every Konami game. You put that code in there, boom, it unlocks certain things, right? But that meant when he said, "Hey, fastest catch," because that code in the game of Helldivers releases a 500 kilogram bomb. So he pretty much was saying, "Hey, fastest, catch this bomb." Everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, Helldivers is racist," or they were saying, "Oh, that didn't mean anything," because of the fact that it was a video game code. So your up, right, down, down, down is your video game code. The "Hey fast" is something he put on there. What that tells you is that at this point, even though this kid is for the MAGA movement, he's not down with fascist or fascism, which a lot of people will tell you that they believe Charlie Kirk was. Let me tell you what I think ignited this and why Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I just told you what Tyler Robinson had on one of his bullets. There's several other sayings. I'll leave that down below. Remember in the beginning, I said words mean something. Just because there's things that we can do, don't mean that we should. Freedom of speech means that we are free to say anything we want. And unfortunately, this also covers hate speech. So I can run around on the street and call every person, every racial name in the book and say what they gonna do, and they gonna catch this foot, and I'm gonna do this to them. And there is not a cop or judge in the world that can arrest me or convict me, because it is free speech. I can do this on YouTube. I could do this on my podcast. I could do this anywhere I want to. However, just because I'm able to say it in this freedom of speech, don't mean that there's a consequence. There is a consequence to everything we do and to everything that we say. And if you are big enough to make this statement, you have to be big enough to stand behind that statement regardless of what happens. This is why those of us who care about our careers, those of us who wants to influence people, those of us that want to bring the real truth behind our podcast or YouTube channel or just being an influencer, we're very careful on what we say, how we say it, because of the fact that we know that words matter. Words has consequences. I just proved to you right now from the mouth of the president what happens when he said that CNN was the enemy of the people. January 6th should also be used in that, because when Trump's saying we're going to go up to the Capitol and we're not going to let them take it over and we're going to take the building and the whole nine, and then Charlie Kirk's like, go fight like hell, and a lot of other people said go fight like hell. Well, those words incited things. I need to remind you of the kind of person that Charlie Kirk left this world and what his legacy is going to forever be. Charlie Kirk has been known as a racist. He's been known as a fascist. He's been known as a misogynist. Now, before anybody goes off, no, he didn't do that, that ain't what he meant, you have to consider the man's own words. I'll just give you a few. On black people, here's the two that always stuck to me. There's many more things she said about black people. Many more names he's called us. He feels like that we should be eradicated. Oh, there's a lot of things. If you want to dig through the hours of interviews and things that Charlie Kirk has done, to say that we as black people is stupid. The first one is, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. In history, unless I'm colorblind, wasn't the Tuskegee Airmen black? Matter of fact, I believe that they were the first black military aviators in the U.S. Armed Forces, and they flew through World War II. They flew combat missions that white pilots couldn't do or get stuff done. But if you see a black pilot, you're going to wonder if he or she is qualified. Another quote that he made about black people is, if I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? Meaning diversity and inclusion. I remind you guys that the biggest participants in diversity and inclusion was not black people. It was white women. But I digress, because they keep throwing this affirmative action thing out here. Here's the last one read you about black people. He says, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called racist. Now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. And that's laughable, because everything that the black man's ever got, we had to work for. The white man took from us. It's kind of like these white only towns right now. I agree. One person said, you can have all the white only towns you want. We don't care. But you can't use anything that black people built. People, do you know that if you had to go in a day of your life without using any invention that a black person built, you would not make it? Don't use traffic lights. Don't use your stove. Don't use a light bulb. Don't do your hair, women. Women, don't go and do anything with makeup. That's just a few things. On gender, feminism, and reproductive rights, he answered back to Taylor Swift and said, reject feminism. Submit to your husband, Taylor. You're not in charge. There was a young girl who was debating Charlie in public. If I remember right, I think that she was a high school student. The question that she asked was, if he had a 10-year-old daughter who was pregnant because she conceived the baby by rape, would he make her have the baby? Now, I can't remember all the answers he gave before that, because he tried to gaslight and get around in the whole nine. And finally, she says, just answer the question. Would you make her have an abortion? And he says, yes, the baby would have to be delivered. Now, let me point this out that I didn't tell you about my political stance in the beginning. Some people call me a conservative Democrat because I don't believe everything that the Democrats do believe. Abortion is one of them. Sorry to people that's for it. I have always been and will continue to be against abortion in any means. However, there are some things I got educated on. See, because years ago, this even touched my life. Yes, I have 6 children. Technically, I should have 7. Because years and years ago, when I was younger, before I met my wife, my current then fiance had gotten pregnant. Had all kinds of complications in pregnancy. She started having symptoms like she was going into labor when the baby was just conceived. And then we get told things like the egg split, they didn't do this right in the whole 9. And that pretty much the baby had already died. So they wanted her to come in to do a DNC. I didn't know that DNC at that time was considered to be abortion. The baby was already gone. They had already showed us that there was no life. So there really, in my opinion, there really was no abortion because of the fact that the baby was already gone. Then one day, my wife comes to me and blows my mind. And she says, you know, a miscarriage is considered an abortion, right? And I was like, no, it's not. Really? She said, yeah, go look it up. She said, it's called spontaneous abortion. I was flabbergasted. I was like, so underneath this new regime that's coming in with Trump and them, are you trying to tell me that a woman, if they get these laws passed, can go to jail for having a miscarriage because they say it's an abortion? She said, yeah. Now, to me, that's not an abortion either, because your body gave up the baby. There is nothing that the mom did. Now, unless she's doing stupid stuff like going out drinking and lifting and getting punched in the stomach, but no mom's doing that cares about their kid, right? So how can you say that somebody's done something wrong when they body just said, hey, you can't handle this right now, so we just gonna kick out the foreign matter and we're gonna, make ourselves heal again. The body gives up that baby. But that's considered to be an abortion. So things like that I'm not against, because I don't believe it's really an abortion if you just miscarry, the baby never really turned full into a human at that point for most people. And the other one is, if you have to have a procedure because they have to clean you out from a baby, unfortunately, that's passed, why is that an abortion? I think there was a woman in the early part of the year or the end of last year that did die for that exact reason, because no doctor she went to would give her DNC because of this whole rule that Trump was making. And they were saying, if we do it's illegal, we could do this, that, another thing. And that woman died. But when it comes to people just going on outright, they have a healthy pregnancy and they just decided this ain't for me and they went and had an abortion, I'm 100% against that. Back in my day, I became against it only because I am a Christian, and the Bible does say, do not take what you cannot give, which is life. Back in my day in the early 80s, a lot of women was using abortion for birth control. Now, I'm not saying all, but there was quite a few. So that was his stance. Yes, if his 10-year-old daughter was pregnant and she was raped and got pregnant that way, that he would indeed make her have the baby. Where I stand on that, I just kind of say, that ain't my decision. I have to let go and let God with that one. That's your individual choice. I understand it came by rape, but that's not my decision to make. That's between you, if you have a spouse or a friend or husband, him, and God. I'm not the one that can make that decision to say, I'm going to condemn you for that, or I can condemn you for any of it. This is what, if you have an abortion, that's between you and God. I'm just telling you, I'm against that. I can't do anything about that. Here's the biggest one, and the last one I'll read you. I'll leave this article down here because there's a lot of other quotes he made on immigration, Islam, religion, hold on, right? Here is the one you keep seeing in the clip. And in closing, I'm going to tell you why a lot of people's not mourning Charlie Kirk the way you want them to, and that he pretty much summed up his own demise, if you really want to think about it. Charlie Kirk made this statement: I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Does that mean that applies to everybody but Charlie Kirk? Did he just not fall victim to what he said he agreed with? He just told you, I'm cool with the fact that we gonna have some gun deaths every single year. Now, he never gave you a number. He never said 1 or 3 or 10 or 12. He said some. That could be any large number of people. But he just told you, I'm totally cool with the fact that there's going to be some gun deaths every single year so that we can keep the Second Amendment where it's at. I think if you find this clip, he goes on further to say that there's no way in the world that we can't have gun deaths or violence or something like that. But this is a big part of his quote. Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a bullet to his neck. Does this statement now get erased? Because he just told you that some gun deaths hasn't happened every single year. Is Charlie now one of those gun deaths that hasn't happened every single year to keep the Second Amendment where it's at and protect our other God-given rights? Sometimes, people, we have to look at the words that people say and do. But no one wants to bring this up. Everyone wants to run around, oh, he was just assassinated and taken out. He didn't do nothing to deserve it. Now I'm going to say this. A man or a woman should never be killed because of words in which they speak. One of my favorite songs of all time by Garth Brooks is called We Shall Be Free. There's a line in there that says, when the last man dies for just words that he's said. But let's roll back over the current president. There's people he wants to put in jail because of words they said. His political adversaries he wants to take out because of words they said. He was to take out Black Lives Matter because of words they said. Not before they took action, but because of words they said. Nobody should ever be killed for simply stating words or stating fact or stating their opinion. Charlie Kirk, no matter what we feel about the statements that he made, should have been able to make every statement that I just read to you and every statement that's on this page. And no matter how derogatory or how racist or whatever, he should never be killed. Same with Donald Trump, same with Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, anybody in the Democratic, anybody in the Republicans, anybody libertarian. Nobody should ever pay a price because they had words to say. But when your statement is that blatant that you say you really don't care if people die every year, that's what he's saying. I don't care if people dies every year because of gun violence. It needs to happen so that we don't screw with the Second Amendment. Man, we need to reform guns. Maybe if some gun laws and gun reform was put into place, maybe Charlie Kirk would still be around. Maybe this young man couldn't get a hold of the guns that he has. Because I've seen some of the guns he's holding. There is no way. I've always said this. There is no way a civilian, a regular, everyday civilian should have their hands on AK-47s and military grade rifles and things that we go to war with. They make pistols for that, little 32s and things like that. No, we ain't rocking that no more. We rocking shotguns and we coming across with AK-47s and, bump stocks and all kinds of stuff. We need to have reform that takes these things out of the way so that, A, we make sure the people that's carrying guns in this country is fit to do so, first of all. That they're not just buying a gun to go kill somebody. Now, in this young man's case, his whole house is littered with guns, right? So he had to pick of the litter. He didn't have to go buy a gun. He didn't have to go look for one. He had all kinds of guns in his house, scopes and the whole nine. But was he sane enough to be around all those guns? We don't know because there's no test to be done. His family didn't notice anything different than him. We need gun reform, people. But since everybody wants to quote the Bible, Charlie Kirk himself said that he believed in God. I hope he did. And I hope he made his peace before he went. But see, I've come to realize this. Everybody wants to quote the Bible when it suits them. Now, before I say this, I have many gay friends. I have friends that are transgender. We've had these conversations before. I stand on this. There are passages in the Bible that does talk about being gay and that the Bible says it's wrong to be gay. But everybody I've talked to with that takes those quotes and wants to twist them and turn them into what they think that they should mean or to what fits them. When the Bible was written, people was written. There is no changing. There is no adding on to, take it away from. It is what it is. Let me give you two verses that goes really well with this Charlie Kirk situation. Now, again, I remind you, to some people, he was a hero. To some people, he was cool. To other people, he was deplorable. He was controversial. He was racist. He was a fascist. These are the people that you're seeing, no matter how wrong it is, rejoice in his death on YouTube and around the world. But what does the Bible say happens to people like this, or any of us that has a stance or we do things in this world? I heard one person said, you can't do hateful things because hate's going to come back on you. It always is, man. Whether you believe in karma or not, I believe karma is real. What goes around eventually comes around. The first verse I'm going to give you is Matthew chapter 26, verse 52. That verse says, put your sword back in its place, for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. That's where you get the statement, live by the sword, die by the sword. Now, certain translations of the Bible translate differently, but that's what it means. If you remember, this was a statement that Jesus had made to his disciple Peter when they were in the Garden of Gethsemane. And that was after Peter had cut off the ear of the high priest's servant during Jesus' arrest. And Jesus warns him, put your sword back, because all who draw this sword will die by the sword. So he's telling Peter, if you're going to draw your sword and cut off this dude's ear, the same thing could and most likely will happen to you. The second verse I'll give you is Galatians 6, 7, and 8. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to please their sinful nature, from that nature will reap destruction. And the one who sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Basically, that passage is saying, hey, man, you are going to harvest what you planted. If you are planting seeds to go with your sinful nature, if you are telling people, I'm cool with people dying because we got to have so many gun deaths to keep the Second Amendment where it's at, that you are going to reap decay, the benefit of that. No matter how you look at it, isn't that kind of what happened to Charlie Kirk, unfortunately? The Bible's clear. Since all of MAGA says that they're Christians, if you listen to this right now, Bible's clear. Just along with the reaping thing, let me show you how serious reaping what you sow is. Because it wasn't just Galatians that covered that. What about Job 4:8? As I have observed, those who plow iniquity and those who sow trouble reap the same. What about Hosea 8:7? For they sow the wind and reap the whirlwind. What about Proverbs 22:8? He who sows injustice will reap disaster. What's going on in the nation right now? Because all of that pertains, but everybody's a Christian, but nobody wants to listen to what the true word of God says when he's laying it out for you. Trump is all in this too, because everything that he's sowing right now, eventually one of these days, he's going to reap it. And it's not going to be well. The last one I get you, what about Romans 6:23? You can't be any more clear than this, since we all believe in the Bible here, and MAGA says they're Christians. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus, our Lord. I'm not saying that we got to be perfect. I'm not saying that we don't sin every day. I mean, even Jesus knew this. He knew we wasn't him. He knew that we have a sinful nature. He took care of that. Many different verses say this, but the one I like is Matthew 16:24. Then Jesus told his disciple, if anyone will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. You've heard Christians before say, pick up my cross and follow him daily. That's exactly what that means. Because every day we wake up, we ask Jesus to forgive us for our sins, and we go on, we're picking up that cross every day, and we choose to follow him. But I think that's what happened to Charlie Kirk. And I think this young man was against being a fascist. He looked at Charlie Kirk as being one, and he took him out. I'm going to say this in closing. Again, I don't condone any type of violence. Don't condone political violence, no kind. Don't condone people out here rejoicing over Charlie Kirk. My thoughts tonight is with his wife, his son, and his daughter. The kids is still too young to know. But you guys have to understand what this is going to do to them when they're old enough to figure out that their dad was, in fact, assassinated and the reasons behind it. The internet never dies. So all these quotes I read you, they're going to read, and all the things that people had to say about their dad, they're going to see. This is not only for more reasons, but another reason I'm so against people out here rejoicing that he's dead, because his children is going to have to see that one day, because it's going to be there. They're going to question themselves of what kind of man was my dad really? Did my dad love us that way? And then you've got, at the time at least, MAGA and the right yelling they want civil war. Now, how do you think that affects the children? Now, you're going to have a civil war, and you're going to go kill all the people on the left that you think is attributed to this, and you're going to want to hang everybody. And then the kid's going to grow up one day and read, due to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, 1,000 people was killed in a war between the right and the left, and they're now they carry that. Oh my gosh, because my dad was killed, another 1,000 people died in his wake. I'm a true crime podcaster, people. I've dealt with a couple cases like this before. I'll just give you two well-known ones. Jim Jones, the guy on the tragedy. Stephen Jones carries the weight of what his dad has done to those people all these years. Every time I've ever seen an interview with Stephen Jones, it's been like a couple years ago now, because it seems like every time an anniversary for Georgetown comes up, they've come up with a new documentary. He's saying the same stuff. My dad was bad. I apologize. I never knew how far he was going to go. I was away at a basketball game at the time that he had everybody commit suicide. I'm sorry. Carrie Rawson, the daughter of the BTK killer, same thing. She wrote a book. This girl got ridiculed. Remember, the way they ended up pinning him for sure after they had already got his name was they went to her clinic and got samples of pap smear that she did to compare the blood. So now they're sitting here going off on her. You had to know your dad was a killer. Didn't your mama know? People, I got stuff in sheds out here in my house that my wife don't even know what's in there because she don't go. So yeah, it is very possible that somebody could be committing all kinds of crimes and the spouse don't know. But now she carries the sins of the father. And her thing is, hey, man, I didn't know my dad was killing people. He was just dad. We went to Yosemite. We hung out. We did things that father-daughter do. He never gave inclinations. BTK was slick, man. He was out here killing people and slipped into the house and nothing ever happened. But if you want civil war and you keep rejoicing over Charlie Kirk's death, these children of his is who's going to be the one that's going to have to carry that on. Because everywhere they go, hey, my name is so-and-so Kirk. Oh my gosh, was your dad Charlie Kirk? Now you're going to hear all these stories you may not want to hear. So let's keep them in mind. My thoughts and prayers is with his wife and his 2 children right now. This was horrible, folks. Never should have happened. If we can't talk things out like this, if I can't come and tell you my true feelings of why I think all this happened, if I can't talk about the sensitive Charlie Kirk and what the Bible says, the very book that all of MAGA says that they believe in, and they preach it every time you see them. They're always talking about God. Just watch the documentary on Daystar, who a lot of these ministers that's surrounding Trump, that's who they go to televise their show. All of these, we praying for Donald Trump. Yeah, we need to pray for Donald Trump. We should pray for Donald Trump. We should pray for the leadership of this country every time that we get up. Regardless how you feel about Donald Trump, we should be praying that God, not Donald Trump, God allows him to make the decisions that he needs to make. But MAGA included, everybody wants to change the Bible around when it suits them. So I hope that Charlie Kirk made his peace with God. I hope that God was able to show him before he passed away the wrongs that he did, and that he was able to ask God for forgiveness in that spot. Because God says up until the time that you have no breath, you can ask him for forgiveness and he will forgive you. To the rest of you, my brothers and sisters, I hope that I didn't lose any listeners. I hope that you took what I had to say and respect that. I respect anybody's stance. I've had people from both sides on my show. There's a person right now that I'm after to come on here that I know for a fact is a Donald Trump supporter. I've never kicked anybody off my show. I just stay away from those questions. And if they want to go that way, I'll say, okay, if you want to give me your opinion, you have to allow me to give you mine. That's all I ask for. Because I think that we have to debate these things. If you disagree with me, send me an email, tell me why you disagree with me. Don't have to yell and cuss and scream and call me names. Just say, hey, I disagree with you because of this. I'll come back and do another episode and say, hey, I got these emails and people said they disagree with me about the sensitive Charlie Kirk. Let's answer that. But if you're going to do that, you have to be willing to sit down and hear what I have to say too. Because I don't think I'm far off from any of this. One more thing before I go, I also said that I would tell you what I think that his wife has grounds to sue. I think she does. Here's why. They didn't learn anything from the first time. You have a president that they've attempted to assassinate twice, and you've changed no security protocols. I think that's a lawsuit. Drones, dude, I got one. My drone costs over $1,200, but you have all kinds of drones that you can fly between $5,000 and a couple thousand just for, regular commercial use. But they got military drones. You can put guns on and 8K cameras and all kinds of stuff. Let's get some drones. Fly some drones over all these buildings before you have anybody from any party go do a speech. the cops pretty much admitted that they dropped the ball because nobody was scanned. But the problem is, because Tyler Robinson slipped in and went to the top of that building, scanning would not have done anything because of the fact that he was already there. So he wouldn't have even came into the scanners. But let's fly some drones. A drone would have seen him and said, hey, there's somebody on top of this roof that's got a gun. Let's get him. Switch all your stuff to indoor venues where you control that. Then if you don't trust outside and somebody may get shot, switch that stuff to indoors. Everybody that I know that's political, with the exception of Malcolm X, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was killed outdoors. Reagan's attempt was, he was walking to his car outdoors. John F. Kennedy was killed in his car outdoors. Charlie Kirk was killed while he was holding a rally outdoors. Malcolm X, again, that I know of, is the only one that was killed inside by his own people because of jealousy. So stage something inside. Have everybody come through gun detectors. Pat everybody down. So that way you know that whoever that is the next person is going to be up there can feel safe and be safe. Have armed guards up there. Have them looking around, making sure everybody's, hey, that dude's fidgeting a little bit too much. Let's get over there. So I think because this has been an attempt before, they couldn't get Trump 2 times. And now that Charlie Kirk is the one that suffers the assassination, I think his wife should take this to the fullest extent of the law. I think she has a serious lawsuit because Trump and the administration that he supports, that he's speaking out on behalf of, failed to protect him. And Trump, if he doesn't, should know that his administration, himself included, is always under a constant threat of danger. So you should always do something to make sure everybody is protected. When it comes to Tyler Robinson, I hope that they hold him accountable to the highest extent of the law. And I want him to be treated like anybody else would, whether you black, white, male, female, rich, poor, Republican, or Democrat. Whatever that sentence is that Tyler Robinson is going to get, it should be equal to what anybody else in that group of people I just named or anybody else should get. If this is a life sentence, carry life. Sorry, I'm also against the death penalty, people, if you don't know that. I'm frankly against the death penalty. I believe that that's also wrong, but give him more life in jail. Because I believe this one thing my mom used to always tell me, and I want you guys to remember this. She said, because when my grandmother was killed in 1974 by a drunk driver, very racist in Georgia at this time, my mom was asked by a reporter, I think, she says, if you could, would you want this man to go to death? And my mom said, no, because can't nobody beat you like God can. All right, guys, that does it for this one. I think we're tuning in, listening to my opinions. This is where we need to be. Let's have that discussion. TrueCrimeAndAuthors@gmail.com. You want to send me an email. If you think I'm right, wrong, you just want to have a debate, I'm always open for that. But this is what needs to happen in this country. If we don't change things, if we don't get on the same foot, if we as Americans, regardless of skin color, regardless of gender, regardless of beliefs, don't all come together, this country is going to go down faster than what it already is. And Charlie Kirk, sadly, will not be the last assassination that's going to take place. Once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to this one. I know that you have many choices in true crime and interview podcasts. I am grateful that I am one of your choices. And remember that you have been listening to the only 3-faceted podcast of its kind. Be good to yourself and to each other. And always remember, always stay humble. An act of kindness can make someone's day. A little love and compassion can go a long way. And remember that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. One link to the link tree has it all. Feel free to drop us a line at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Arslan. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild and David McClam. Theme music, Legendary, by New Alchemist. Introduction and ending credits by Jackie Voice. See you next time on True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People.